The history of the American West has been whitewashed for centuries. But look closer at these old photographs, and you'll see the truth. 1 in 4 cowboys was black. Today, we go beyond the legends you know. This is a deep dive into 16 more forgotten souls who lived, fought, and died in the dust of the frontier. His name was Crawford Goldsby, but history trembles at the mention of Cherokee Bill. Born on February 8, 1876 at Fort Concho, Texas, he was a mix of African American, Cherokee, and European blood. A man of 3 worlds, but a master of none, except violence. His path to hell began at just 18 years old over a dispute at a dance. By 1894, he joined the Cook Gang, turning the Indian Territory into a landscape of blood. Within 2 years, he was credited with at least 13 murders. The authorities were desperate, placing a $1,300 bounty on his head, a fortune in the 1890s. Bill wasn't just fast with a Winchester, he was cold. On September 28, 1894, during a robbery in Nevada, he shot a painter named Ernest Melton simply because he was looking through a window. When he was finally captured by a 7-man posse and sentenced to hang, the judge asked for his final words. Bill's reply was a chilling echo of his soul. "I came here to die, not to make a speech." On March 17, 1896, before a crowd of 1,500 people, the Billy the Kid of the Black West was gone. Only 19 years old, but a lifetime of terror. Before he was Isom Dart, he was Ned Huddleston, born into slavery in Arkansas, 1849. After the Civil War, he drifted west, becoming a man of the shadows. In 1875, after a narrow escape from a gunfight, he changed his name, hoping to bury his past in the dust of Brown's Park. He was a master of the long rope. It is said Isom could steal 300 horses and vanish before the sun touched the horizon. But he had a gentle side. He was a horse whisperer, using patience instead of pain to break wild stallions. By the late 1900s, Isom tried to go straight. He built a ranch on 2,000 acres of rugged land, raising his own cattle. But the powerful cattle barons wanted him gone. They hired the most clinical killer in the West, Tom Horn. On the morning of October 3, 1900, as Isom stepped out of his cabin, a single shot rang out from the brush. Tom Horn was hiding 280 yards away. Isom Dart never had a chance to draw his pistol. He fell in the dirt. A man who died not for his crimes, but for the land he owned. A pioneer, silenced by a coward's bullet. In 1874, the gold mining camp of Yankee Hill, Colorado, was a hellhole. Outlaws ruled the streets, and the previous marshal had been run out of town in shame. Then came Willie Kennard. He didn't look like a hero. He was a former Buffalo soldier, having served 10 years in the 9th Cavalry. He carried a discharge paper and 2 ivory-handled revolvers. When he walked into the saloon to ask for the marshal's job, the town bully, Barney Cashel, laughed. He told Willie a black man's only job was in the kitchen. Willie didn't argue. He challenged Cashel to a duel right there in front of everyone. From 20 paces, before Cashel could even touch his holster, Willie fired. He didn't kill him. He shot the cigar right out of Barney's cowl, then shot the belt buckle off his pants. In less than 30 minutes, Willie Kennard had the badge. During his time as marshal, he arrested the notorious Cashel gang, facing down 10 armed men by himself. He proved that the badge wasn't about the color of your skin, but the steel in your nerves. Willie Kennard, the first black marshal of Colorado, a man of silent power. Bose Ickard was born into slavery in 1843, but he died as one of the most respected cattlemen in Texas history. In 1666, he joined the legendary Charles Goodnight and Oliver Loving to blaze a trail that would change the American economy forever. The Goodnight-Loving Trail stretched for 2,000 miles through scorching deserts and hostile territories. For 4 years, Bose was Goodnight's right-hand man, his night herder, and his most trusted scout.
He carried the ranch's cash, often tens of thousands of dollars, because Goodnight knew that no one would dare cross Bo's Icard. In a time of deep segregation, their bond broke every rule. When Bose passed away in 1929, Goodnight did something unthinkable for that era. He erected a granite monument for his friend, carved with these words: "Served with me 4 years on the Goodnight loving trail, never failed me at any time or place, and had my unlimited confidence." Look at the rugged lines on his face in this 19th century portrait. Those are the marks of a man who survived Comanche raids and the brutal winters of the high plains. Bo's Icard didn't just drive cattle, he drove the spirit of the West forward.
The year was 1912, the place Salinas, California. A crowd of thousands held their breath as a man named Jesse Stahl mounted a horse no other cowboy could tame. The bronc was called Glass Eye, a beast of pure fury. Jesse didn't just ride him, he conquered him. It was the greatest performance the judges had ever seen, but when the scores were announced, the world witnessed a different kind of brutality. Despite his flawless ride, the judges gave Jesse Stahl 10th place, simply because he was black. How did Jesse respond? He didn't walk away. Instead, he got back on another wild bronc, but this time he sat backwards, facing the horse's tail. He rode perfectly, a silent middle finger to the racism of the era. He proved that even with his back turned, he was still better than anyone else in the arena. Jesse Stahl competed in hundreds of rodeos across the West, earning the title of Peerless Ground and Loft Tumbler. Though he died in 1935, it took the world nearly 45 years to fix the mistake, finally inducting him into the Rodeo Hall of Fame in 1979, a man who rode against the wind and against the world. In the freezing winds of the Canadian Rockies, one name commanded absolute respect: John Ware. Born into slavery, he traveled over 2,000 miles to Montana, and in 1882, he joined a massive cattle drive of 1,000 head destined for the lush plains of Alberta, Canada. John was a giant of a man, standing over 6 feet tall and weighing 230 pounds of pure muscle. Legend says he could walk under a horse, lift it off the ground, and hold it there. But his true strength was his character. He arrived in a land where he was the only black cowboy, but by 1888, he had built his own ranch, the 4 Nines. He survived blizzards that killed thousands of cattle and faced down wolves with nothing but his hands. He was so skilled, it was said the horse hadn't been born that John Ware couldn't ride. Tragically, on September 12, 1905, his horse tripped in a badger hole. The fall crushed the man who seemed invincible. His funeral was the largest in the history of Calgary at that time. John Ware didn't just settle the land, he became the very foundation of the Canadian West, a legend written in the snow and the soil. In the year 1870, a young cowboy named George Glenn embarked on a journey that would define the meaning of loyalty. He was just 25 years old, working for a rancher named Robert Johnson. They were driving a massive herd over 1,000 miles from Texas to Abilene, Kansas. But midway through the trail, tragedy struck. Robert Johnson fell ill and died in the middle of the wilderness. In those days, bodies were usually buried where they fell, but George Glenn made a promise. He would bring his boss home. For weeks, under the blistering sun and through dangerous territories, George stayed with the body. He salted it, wrapped it in cowhide, and hauled it on a wagon while still managing the stampede in cattle. He endured the smell, the loneliness, and the judgment of others. When he finally arrived back in Texas, he had completed a feat of grit that no one thought possible. George Glenn lived to be 86 years old, passing away in 1931. He was buried in the same cemetery as the man he refused to abandon. Look at his face. That is the look of a man whose word was stronger than death itself. Most people think the black cowboy died out in the 1900s. They are wrong. Meet Charlie Sampson,
the man who proved that the spirit of the frontier survives in the soul of an athlete. In 1982, he did the unthinkable. He became the first African American to win the world champion bull riding title. Rodeo is a game of inches and agony. Charlie didn't just ride bulls, he survived them. Over his career, he suffered 11 broken bones. He had over 100 stitches on his face alone in 1983 when a bull crushed his skull. But every time he fell, he stood back up. He grew up in the concrete jungle of Watts, California, far from the plains. But at 13, he discovered the stables and a fire was lit. He practiced until his hands bled, until he could balance on 2,000 pounds of pure angry muscle for those legendary 8 seconds. Charlie Sampson is a living bridge between the old legends and the new pioneers. He showed the world that a cowboy isn't defined by his hat, but by how many times he can rebuild himself after being broken. A champion of bone, blood, and pure will.
George McJunkin was born a slave, died a cowboy, but in between, he became one of the most important figures in science. In the year 1908, after a devastating flood in Folsom, New Mexico, McJunkin was riding along a deep arroyo when he saw something impossible. Sticking out of the mud were massive bones, much larger than any cattle. But what caught his eye was a flint projectile point embedded in the bone. George was a self-taught scientist. He read books on geology and astronomy by the campfire. He knew this was ancient. He spent the rest of his life trying to get scientists to listen. They ignored him because of his color. It wasn't until 4 years after his death in 1922 that experts finally visited the site. What they found changed history forever. Those bones belonged to an extinct bison, and the spear point proved that humans lived in North America 10,000 years earlier than previously thought. A black cowboy with a telescope and a thirst for knowledge had rewritten the timeline of humanity. He was more than a ranch foreman. He was the man who unlocked the ancient secrets of the West. If there was a man who lived 1,000 lives, it was Jim Beckwourth. Born to an enslaved mother and a white father, he escaped the constraints of the East in 1824 to become a mountain man, a fur trapper, and a legend. He didn't just survive the wilderness, he dominated it. In the late 1820s, he was captured by the Crow Nation, but instead of meeting his end, he rose through their ranks, becoming a war chief known as Medicine Calf. For 6 years, he led thousands of warriors into battle, living as a king among the original people of the land. In 1850, Jim made his most lasting mark on the map. He discovered a pass through the Sierra Nevada mountains, the lowest and safest route for wagons heading to the California Gold Rush. It is still called Beckwourth Pass today. His life was so epic that people thought his autobiography was a lie. They called him a gaudamus, a teller of tall tales. But history has proved him right. He was a bridge between cultures, a warrior who saw the horizon and dared to cross it. Jim Beckwourth, the man who redefined the word explorer. The year was 1804. Meriwether Lewis and William Clark set out to map the unknown West, but they didn't go alone. Behind the famous names stood a man of immense strength, a man known simply as York. He was the only black member of the Corps of Discovery, traveling over 8,000 miles through uncharted wilderness. York wasn't just a servant, he was vital. He hunted for the team, navigated treacherous rivers, and befriended indigenous tribes who had never seen a black man. They called him Big Medicine, believing his skin held mystical power. But York's most historic moment happened on November 24, 1805, at the mouth of the Columbia River.
In an era where neither black men nor women could vote, the captains allowed everyone to decide where to build their winter camp. York's vote was recorded, making it one of the first times in American history a black man's voice was counted in a democratic decision. Despite his 8,000-mile sacrifice, when the expedition returned in 1906, the white members received land and money. York received nothing. He returned to the chains of slavery, but his footprints are permanently etched into the soil of the Pacific Northwest, a pioneer who gave his all for a country that didn't yet give him his freedom. The legends of the West are usually about men, but the dust of Texas tells a different story. Meet Johanna Jully, a woman of black Seminole heritage who redefined what it meant to be a cowboy. Born around 1860 near Eagle Pass, she didn't just ride horses, she mastered them. By the 1870s, Johanna was working for the U.S. Army and local ranchers, doing a job most men feared. Her secret? She didn't use whips or spurs. She had a technique that was pure genius. When a wild stallion refused to be tamed, Johanna would lead it into the deep, rushing waters of the Rio Grande. In the water, the horse couldn't kick or buck. Johanna would swim alongside, whisper to the animal, and mount it while it was vulnerable. By the time they reached the shore, the horse was calm, and Johanna was its leader. She was a pioneer of natural horsemanship long before the term existed. Johanna Jully lived a life of fierce independence, owning her own land and her own destiny at a time when society tried to limit both. Look at the strength in her history, a woman who tamed the wild by embracing the current.
History calls her Aunt Clara, but Clara Brown was a titan of the Colorado Gold Rush. Born into slavery in 1800, she spent 59 years in bondage before gaining her freedom. Most people would have retired, but Clara headed west in 1859, becoming the first black woman to join the rush for gold. She arrived in Central City with nothing but a washboard. She started a laundry business for miners, working 18 hours a day. She saved every penny, not for greed, but for a mission. Clara began investing in real estate and gold mines, eventually owning interests in 7 different claims. She became one of the wealthiest women in the territory, but her heart was focused on a tragedy. Slavery had torn her family apart, and Clara spent over $10,000, a fortune in the 1800s, searching for her lost daughter. After 23 years of searching, at the age of 82, she finally found her daughter, Eliza Jane. Clara Brown was more than a pioneer. She was a philanthropist who funded churches and helped hundreds of former slaves settle in the West. She proved that the true gold of the frontier wasn't found in the mines, but in the resilience of the human spirit. In the lawless town of Deadwood in 1876, there was one person even the roughest miners dared not cross. Her name was Lucretia Marchbanks, but everyone called her Mother. Born into slavery in 1832, she arrived in the Black Hills with nothing but her skills and a spine of steel. She ran the kitchens of the grandest hotels and later her own boarding house. Why was she a titan? Because Lucretia knew that in a land of gold, hunger was the greatest master. Legend says a wealthy man once offered her $10,000 just for her secret pancake recipe. She refused. She wasn't just a cook, she was a savvy investor. By 1883, she owned her own ranch in Wyoming, managing cattle and land in a world that tried to deny her both. She lived to be 79 years old, passing away in 1911 as a beloved pioneer. Lucretia Marchbanks proved that power isn't always found in a gun. Sometimes it's found in the respect you command and the empire you build with your own 2 hands.
Every Wild West story needs a villain, or at least a very smooth liar. Meet Ben Hodges. While others were herding cattle or mining gold, Ben was mining the gullibility of the frontier. In the 1880s, he arrived in Dodge City, Kansas, the wickedest city in the West. Ben wasn't a gunman, he was a con man with a silver tongue. He claimed to be a descendant of Spanish royalty, carrying forged documents that supposedly gave him rights to millions of acres of land grants. He walked with the confidence of a king, and for nearly 20 years, Dodge City believed him. Bankers gave him loans, merchants gave him credit. He even sat on juries and influenced local politics. Ben Hodges managed to trick some of the smartest men in Kansas, using nothing but a fake smile and a pack of lies. When the truth finally caught up to him, and his fake Spanish land grants were proven to be worthless paper, Ben didn't run. He simply stayed in town, laughing it off. Even after his death in 1929, his legend remained. Ben Hodges proved that in the West, sometimes a well-told story was more powerful than a loaded Colt, a master of the long con and a colorful shadow in the history of Dodge City. Her story began in chains, but it ended in an empire. Meet Elizabeth Biddy Mason. Born into slavery in 1818, she was forced to follow her master's wagon train on a brutal journey. She walked for 7 months, covering 2,000 miles across the dust and heat of the American West, all while herding cattle and caring for her children. In 1856, when her master tried to take her to a slave state, Biddy did something fearless. She sued her for her freedom in a California court. At a time when black voices were often silenced, Biddy won. The judge ruled that she was free, and her life truly began at the age of 38. She moved to Los Angeles, working as a midwife and nurse for barely $2.50 a day. She saved every cent, and 10 years later, she bought her first piece of land for $250. She didn't stop there. By the 1890s, Biddy Mason had built a real estate empire worth over $300,000, a staggering fortune for that era. Look at her eyes in this portrait. That is the gaze of a woman who walked through hell to buy a piece of heaven. She became one of the greatest philanthropists in LA history, proving that no matter where you start, the frontier belongs to those who refuse to stay small. A titan of the West, a legend of pure grit. 16 lives, 16 legacies. The frontier was built on the backs of heroes the world tried to forget. If you believe these stories need to be heard, support the channel. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this video with a history lover. Tell us in the comments which character moved you the most. I am Vintage Shots, and the past is never truly gone.